The first thing I saw when I turned onto my road was smoke. Not the thin gray smoke from a barbecue. Not the harmless haze from someone burning leaves. This was black, violent smoke rolling above the trees like a storm cloud. And beneath it, behind the private gate of my own neighborhood, was my house. Burning, I slammed my pickup into the gravel shoulder and jumped out before the truck had fully stopped. "Call 911, I shouted. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Sirens. The fire engines were already there, but they weren't moving. 3 emergency vehicles sat outside the massive wrought iron entrance gate to our subdivision, lights flashing, engines running, firefighters standing beside them. And between the fire trucks and my burning house stood 2 HOA security guards. They had physically blocked the gate. For a few seconds I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then one of the firefighters spotted me. "Sir, is that your property?" "Yes! Get back! The structure is fully involved." I pointed toward the gate. "Why aren't you inside?" The firefighter's expression tightened. "They won't open it." I stared at the guards. One of them was holding a radio against his chest. The other stood beside a steel barrier that had been lowered across the private access road. I recognized both men. They worked for the OA, and they knew exactly who I was. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 47 years old, and for 22 years I'd worked in fire service. For the last 8, I'd served as a county fire marshal. I'd spent my career teaching people that seconds mattered. A locked gate could mean the difference between a damaged room and a dead family. That morning, I was about to learn what happened when an HOA decided its private rules mattered more than a fire engine. I ran toward the gate. "Open it." The older guard, Rick Dalton, raised one hand. "Sir, you can't enter." "That's my house. We have authorization to restrict access." "Authorization from who?" He didn't answer. Behind him, flames were climbing through the second-floor windows of my home. My wife, Emily, was out of town visiting her sister. My teenage son, Tyler, was at school. As far as I knew, nobody was inside, but that didn't make the fire less terrifying. That house wasn't just wood and brick. It was where I'd raised my family, where my father had died in the living room 3 years earlier, where Emily and I had spent 21 years building a life, and now the roof was glowing orange. I looked at the firefighters. "Can you force the gate?" The captain shook his head. "We're trying to establish whether we have legal access through this private road." I almost laughed. "Legal access? My house is burning." "I understand." "No, you don't." I turned toward Rick. "Open the gate." He shook his head. "OA policy requires approval before emergency vehicles enter during restricted hours." I thought I'd misheard him. "What did you just say?" "It's a private community." I stepped closer. "Rick, I'm the county fire marshal." His face changed. Then he looked away. "I know who you are." "Then you know this gate has an emergency override. We've been instructed not to use it." "Be whom?" Silence. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't a simple mistake. Someone had given an order. Someone had decided that my house could burn while firefighters waited outside. I pulled out my phone and called the county dispatch supervisor. "Put me through to engine 14. The dispatcher recognized my voice immediately. "Marshal Mercer." "Yes, I'm at my residence. The structure is burning. HOA security is preventing emergency access." There was a pause. Then her voice became very serious. "Are you saying the fire department is being denied entry?" "Wes, I'll notify the battalion chief. Do it now." I ended the call. Another window exploded. A wave of orange fire punched through the upstairs bedroom, Emily's bedroom. My stomach dropped. "Open the gate!" Rick stepped backward. "Sir, I can't." I stared at him. "You can. I have orders." "Then call whoever gave you those orders." He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I turned to the fire captain. "Captain, I need your crew ready the second that gate opens." "We're ready." I nodded. Then I noticed something strange. The fire wasn't spreading the way it should have. The western side of the house was burning intensely, but the eastern side was almost untouched. That meant the fire had likely started in one area. Then I saw the second thing. My driveway camera was gone. The small security camera mounted above the garage wasn't there. Someone had removed it. I looked at the guards. "Where's my camera?" Neither answered. The captain noticed my expression. "What is it?" "My security camera was mounted right there yesterday." He followed my gaze. "That's interesting." "No." I looked back at the burning house. "It's more than interesting." A police cruiser finally came racing down the road behind us. Sheriff's Deputy Mark Ellis jumped out. He knew me from several county fire investigations. "Daniel, Mark, get that gate open." He walked toward Rick. "Open it." Rick shook his head. "I need authorization." Mark looked at me. Then at the fire. Then back at Rick. "Authorization from who?" Rick didn't answer. Mark's radio crackled. He listened for several seconds. Then his expression hardened. "Rick, I'm ordering you to move the barrier." Rick swallowed. "I can't." Mark stepped closer. "You're obstructing emergency response. I have OA instructions." "Then show me the instructions." Rick froze. The second guard suddenly walked toward the security booth. "Where are you going?" Mark asked. "To get the paperwork." Mark followed him. I stood there watching the flames. The roof began to collapse. A massive section crashed inward, sending sparks into the sky. My hands were shaking. Not because I was afraid of the fire. I'd been around fires my entire adult life. I was shaking because I knew exactly what those flames meant. If the fire had another 5 minutes, the structure might be beyond saving. If it had 10, the neighboring homes could be threatened. And every second was being wasted because someone wanted to enforce an HOA rule. Then my phone rang. It was Emily. I answered immediately. Emily. Her voice was panicked. Daniel, what's happening? Tyler called me. He said the house is on fire! I'm handling it. Are you inside? No. I'm outside. Thank God. I looked at the flames. Listen to me. Stay where you are. Don't come back here. But our house. I know. There was silence. Then she whispered everything. I couldn't answer. The captain suddenly shouted. Daniel, I turned. He was pointing toward the security booth. A piece of paper had fallen onto the ground. Mark picked it up. His face changed. Daniel, what? He handed it to me. It was an HOA emergency access directive. At the top was the community's name. Below it was a handwritten instruction. Do no do overdigado moped do do azigo show I resid ion. I looked at the signature. My heart stopped. The order had been signed by someone I knew very well. Victoria Hale, the HOA president. The woman who had spent the last 2 years fighting me over my property. The woman who had tried to force me to remove my barn. The woman who had once told me that my acreage was an eyesore because it didn't fit the neighborhood's development plan. And now her signature was on the order keeping firefighters away from my burning home. I looked at Mark. When was this issued? He checked the date. Yesterday. Yesterday. Before the fire, I looked back at my house. The flames reflected in the windows of the fire engines. For the first time that morning, I stopped thinking like a homeowner. I started thinking like a fire marshal. Someone had known about this fire before it happened. Maybe not the fire itself. But someone had deliberately created a situation where emergency crews couldn't reach my property quickly. And if that was true, then my burning house wasn't the whole story, it was evidence. I turned toward the captain. Don't put out that fire yet. He stared at me. What? Obviously, save the structure if you can. But preserve everything you can. His expression became serious. Daniel, what are you thinking? I looked at the OA gate, then at the security booth, then at the flames consuming my home. I think somebody wanted this fire to happen. The captain looked toward the house. Arson, I don't know. I looked down at the signed order in my hand, but I'm going to find out. And at that moment, behind the smoke and flashing emergency lights, I saw Victoria Hale's black SUV approaching the gate. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even looking at the burning house. She was looking directly at me. And when she stepped out of the SUV, she smiled. That was when I knew. Whatever had started that morning wasn't ending with my house. It was only beginning. Victoria Hale walked toward me as if she were arriving at a HO meeting instead of a house fire. She was 52, perfectly dressed, her silver blonde hair pulled into the same tight shoulder length style she wore to every board meeting. Her navy blazer wasn't wrinkled. Her shoes weren't dusty. Not even a strand of hair had moved. Behind her, my house was still burning. She looked at the flames. Then she looked at me. Daniel, she said calmly. This is unfortunate. I couldn't believe those were her first words. Unfortunate. She folded her arms. Yes. But we have procedures for emergencies in this community. I held up the document Mark had found. Your procedure is the reason firefighters are standing outside my burning house. Victoria's expression barely changed. The gate is private. It has an emergency access system, which requires authorization. Authorization you refuse to give. She glanced at Rick. Rick followed the rules. The fire captain stepped forward. Mom, those rules nearly cost us several minutes of response time. Victoria looked at him. I understand your frustration. No, I said. You don't. She turned toward me. Your property has been a recurring issue with the association. My property? You've repeatedly refused reasonable compliance requests. I stared at her. My house is on fire, Victoria, and I am trying to prevent this situation from becoming more dangerous. I almost laughed. You prevented firefighters from entering. She didn't respond. That silence was more revealing than anything she'd said. Then the sheriff's deputy walked over. Ems Hale, I need you to come with me. Her face tightened. Why? We need to establish who authorized the gate restriction. I already told you. It's HOA policy. Then you won't mind providing the original authorization. She looked at me. For the first time I saw fear. It lasted less than a second, then she turned toward the security booth. Of course. But before she could move, another sound came from behind us. A truck, a county utility truck, and behind it came 2 more vehicles. County inspectors. That was when Victoria's confidence finally cracked. Because they weren't there for the fire. They were there for my property. The lead inspector, Harold Benton, stepped out carrying a folder. He walked straight toward me. Daniel, we need to talk? About what? He looked at the burning house. Not here? I followed him several feet away. What happened? He lowered his voice. We received a complaint about an unpermitted gas line alteration on your property. I stared at him. What? Last night? My stomach tightened. Who filed it? He hesitated. Anonymous. I looked toward Victoria. She was speaking quietly with the sheriff. Did you inspect the line? Not yet. Then don't touch anything. Why? Because if this is connected to the fire, we're dealing with evidence. Harold looked at me. You think the fire was intentional? I don't know. I pointed toward the house. But I know someone removed my security camera. His expression changed. That's important. It was mounted above the garage yesterday. Who has access to your property? Family. Contractors, HOA inspectors. He paused. HOA inspectors. I nodded. Victoria sent people onto my land twice last month. The Herald wrote something down. For what? They claimed they were documenting violations. What violations? My barn. Fence height. Agricultural equipment. The usual. Herald looked toward Victoria. Then back at me. Daniel, there is something else. What? The complaint included photographs. Photographs of what? The gas line. My skin went cold. Whoever filed the complaint had photographs taken from inside your property. I stared at him. That's impossible. That's what I thought. Unless... I looked at the security booth. Unless someone had access. Before Harold could respond, the fire captain shouted, "Everyone back." We turned. A section of the roof collapsed. Firefighters moved into position. Water finally began blasting through the gate. The emergency barrier had been lifted. The fire engines rushed forward. For the first time since I arrived, the road filled with the sound I'd been waiting for. Sirens, engines, water, people moving with purpose. I watched firefighters disappear into the smoke, and I realized something. They had lost nearly 7 minutes. 7 minutes that could never be recovered. I stood beside Mark. Why did the gate suddenly open? He looked toward Victoria. She gave permission. I turned. Victoria was standing beside her SUV. After all that, I asked. She shrugged. I realized the situation was more serious than initially understood. I stared at her. You understood at the moment you saw my house burning. She didn't answer. Then something happened that changed everything. A firefighter came running out of the house. Captain? The captain turned. What? We found a second ignition point. Everyone went silent. What do you mean? I asked. The firefighter looked at me. There are signs of fire in 2 separate areas. My heart sank. The captain motioned for everyone to stay back. Where? Garage and kitchen. I looked at Victoria. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the ground. That was when Mark quietly said, "Daniel, don't accuse anyone yet." I wasn't going to. Good. He looked toward the security booth. Because we're going to find out who was here last night. I walked toward the booth. The younger security guard, Kevin, was standing behind the desk. He looked terrified. Kevin. He didn't respond. Look at me. He slowly raised his eyes. Did you see anyone at my property last night? No. Think carefully. I didn't see anyone. Did you check the cameras? He swallowed. Wes! Do the cameras record. Wes, then show me the footage. He looked at Rick. Rick shook his head. No footage can be released without HOA authorization. I stared at him. You're kidding.
No.
Mark stepped forward. Actually, that's not correct. Rick looked at him. We have probable cause to preserve the footage. Kevin suddenly spoke. It's gone. Everyone turned. Rick's face went pale. Kevin swallowed. The footage from last night? Where is it? Mark asked. Kevin pointed at the computer. It was deleted this morning. Silence. I looked at Victoria. She was staring at Kevin. Not angrily, terrified. Who deleted it? Mark asked. Kevin shook his head. I don't know. Who has administrative access? Kevin didn't answer. Mark asked again. Kevin whispered one word. The board. Victoria stepped forward. That doesn't mean anything. Mark turned toward her. Hale, who on the board has administrator credentials. She looked at him. Several people. Names. She hesitated. Then gave him 3. The HOA treasurer. The property manager and herself. I felt something inside me settle. Not anger, something colder. I had spent years dealing with people who thought rules made them untouchable. But rules didn't protect people from evidence. And Victoria had just placed herself on the list of people who could delete the evidence. Then Harold called me from across the road. Daniel. I walked over. He was standing beside my driveway. Look at this. He pointed at the gravel. There were tire tracks. Fresh ones. They led from my house toward a narrow service road behind the community. Those weren't there yesterday, I said. Harold nodded. What kind of vehicle? Looks like a pickup. I looked closer. The tread pattern was unusual. Deep agricultural tires. Then I remembered something. A black pickup had been parked near my barn 2 nights earlier. I had assumed it belonged to a contractor, but I hadn't hired anyone. Can you photograph those? I asked. Harold nodded. Then Mark walked over holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a small metal object. What is that?
I asked. He shook his head.
Wu found it near the garage. I leaned closer. It looked like part of a timer. My stomach dropped. That doesn't belong to my house? Mark looked at me. That's what we're trying to determine. Then Victoria shouted from behind us. This is ridiculous. Everyone turned. She was standing beside her SUV. You're treating me like a criminal because my association followed its own rules. I walked toward her. No one said you're a criminal? You've implied it? No. I stopped several feet away. You did that yourself. Her face reddened. You've been fighting this association for years. I've been defending my property. You've refused every attempt to bring your land into compliance. Because the rules you're trying to enforce don't apply to my acreage. Her eyes narrowed. They will. That sentence stayed with me. Not because of what she said. Because of how confidently she said it. Then I remembered something. 6 months earlier, Victoria had offered to buy my property. She said that HOA wanted to expand the development. I refused. 3 months later, she sent me a violation notice. 2 months later, she threatened legal action. And now my house was burning. I looked at the flames. Then at her. How badly do you want my land, Victoria? Her expression changed. Excuse me. You heard me. This isn't about your property. Then why was the HOA trying to change my boundary lines? She went silent. Harold looked at me. What boundary changes? I turned toward him. Exactly. Victoria stepped forward. Daniel, you're confused. No, I pointed toward the road. I'm starting to understand. Mark's radio suddenly crackled. He listened. Then his eyes widened. Daniel. What? We found something in the security office. He looked toward Victoria. A key log. I walked over. Mark handed me the sheet. There were entries for the previous 48 hours. One name appeared repeatedly, Victoria Hale. But the final entry wasn't hers. It was logged at 20:13 a.m., the night before the fire. The person who entered the security office had used an emergency administrator code. The name attached to the code was blank. I looked at Mark. Who knows that code? He shook his head. We're about to find out. Behind us, firefighters continued battling the flames. And then, just as the smoke began to thin, one firefighter emerged carrying a charred metal box. He placed it on the ground. This was hidden behind the electrical panel. I stared at it. What is it? The captain crouched down. Looks like an old property document box. He opened it carefully. Inside were several papers. Most were burned beyond recognition, but one page remained readable. It was a survey map. My property boundary was marked in red, and someone had drawn a new boundary over it. The new line cut directly through my land. I looked at Victoria. She was staring at the map, and suddenly I understood why she had wanted my property. The HOA wasn't trying to control my ranch. They were trying to take it, and the fire may have been the first step. I folded my arms. Victoria, she looked at me. I held up the map. O's signature is this? Her face went completely white, because at the bottom of the page was a signature. Not mine, not the county surveyor's, not a judge's, hers, and beneath it was a date, 6 weeks before my house burned. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I held the survey map in my hands while Victoria stared at the signature at the bottom. You forged nothing, she finally said. I looked at her. I didn't say you forged it. Her eyes moved toward the county inspector. Harold Benton took the map from me and studied it carefully. Where did you get this? Inside my house. He looked at the burned edges. Did you know this document existed? No. Victoria stepped forward. That map is meaningless. Harold looked at her. Why? Because it isn't an approved county survey. Then why is your signature on it? Victoria didn't answer. The sheriff's deputy stepped closer. Ms. Hale, I'm going to ask you one more time. Who authorized this document? She looked around. The firefighters were watching. The county inspectors were watching. Even the AO guards had stopped pretending they weren't listening. I don't remember, she said. I almost smiled. You don't remember signing a document that redraws my property boundary. I sign hundreds of documents, not ones that give your HOA control over private acreage. She turned toward me. You've been hostile toward the association from day one, and you've been trying to acquire my land from day one. That is not true. Then explain the map. She had no answer. The fire captain interrupted. Daniel, I turned. We've got the main fire under control. I looked toward the house. The flames had finally been knocked down. What remained was a blackened shell. My roof was partially gone. Most of the upstairs windows had shattered. Water poured from the structure. Smoke drifted through the trees. I felt something break inside me. For years, that house had been the center of our family. Now it looked like an empty skeleton. Emily arrived 20 minutes later. The moment she stepped out of her sister's car, she stopped. She stared at the house. Then she covered her mouth. I walked toward her. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. She simply put her arms around me. And for the first time that morning, I let myself cry. Not because of the money, not because of the property, because of everything that house represented. Our children's birthdays, Christmas mornings, my father's final days, Emily's wedding ring hidden in the kitchen cabinet before I proposed. Every ordinary memory that had suddenly become priceless. Then Emily whispered something. Did they really stop the fire trucks? I nodded. Her eyes moved toward Victoria. And she did it. She signed the gate order. Emily looked at me. Then don't let this go. I didn't. That afternoon, the county fire investigation officially began. The investigators photographed everything. The electrical system, the garage, the kitchen, the remains of the security camera, the gate logs, the security booth. Every piece of evidence was documented. I stayed out of the investigation as much as possible. Being the fire marshal didn't mean I could investigate my own house without conflicts, so the county assigned an outside investigator named Lucas Grant. Lucas was a former state fire investigator with 30 years of experience. He was quiet, methodical, and impossible to intimidate. At sunset, he called me aside. I need to tell you something. What? This wasn't an accidental fire. My stomach tightened. You're sure? He nodded. There are 2 separate ignition areas.
No. Gas? No.
He paused. Accelerant. I stared at him. You found traces?
Yes.
Where? Garage and hallway. My jaw tightened. 2 locations. Yes. Lucas looked toward the gate. And there's something else. What? The fire was started shortly before 6:00 a.m. I looked at my watch. The first emergency call had come in at 6:07. How do you know? Because the fire had already reached a specific stage when the first witness reported smoke. So whoever did this knew exactly how long it would take to spread. Lucas nodded. That appears to be the case. Then he handed me a photograph. It showed the remains of my garage. Near the back wall was a small metal device. I recognized it immediately. The same type of timer Mark had found. This was connected to something. Lucas nodded. A delayed ignition system. I felt cold. So whoever did this didn't want to be here when the fire started. Exactly. I looked toward Victoria's SUV. She was gone. That bothered me more than it should have. The next morning I met with an attorney. Her name was Rachel Morgan. She was 43, sharp, calm, and had spent most of her career handling property disputes and civil litigation. I showed her everything. The survey map, the photographs, the security records, the fire investigator's preliminary findings. She studied everything without saying much. Finally she looked up. Daniel, I think you have two separate cases. Two. First the fire. She tapped the photographs. That's criminal. Then she tapped the survey map. This is civil. And the HOA. She leaned back. The HOA may be sitting directly in the middle of both. I asked her the question I'd been avoiding. What do you think they were trying to do? She looked at the boundary map. If someone could make your property appear to be part of an HOA-controlled development, they might try to force you into a sale or create a legal dispute over access. But they can't just redraw my property line. Not legally. I stared at her. Then why would they? Because sometimes people don't need to win a case. She paused. They just need to make you spend enough money defending yourself that you give up. That sentence stayed with me. Rachel filed an emergency preservation request for all HOA records, emails, messages, gate logs, board meeting minutes, financial records, property acquisition discussions, security footage, everything. Within 48 hours, the OA's attorney responded. He claimed the association had done nothing wrong. He described the gate restriction as a routine security measure. He called the survey map unofficial planning document, and he denied that the HOA had any involvement in the fire. Then Rachel found something. An email, sent from Victoria to the HOA board 6 weeks before the fire. The subject line was simple, Mercer property, final option. The email contained a proposed purchase price for my entire ranch, but there was something strange about the number. It was less than half the property's market value. Rachel read the email twice. Then she looked at me. They were planning to pressure you. Can we prove it? She nodded. Why, she opened another document, then another. The board had commissioned a private development assessment. The assessment showed that if my acreage became part of the subdivision, the HOA could add 32 new lots. The projected profit was enormous. Suddenly, the motive wasn't theoretical. My land was standing between the HOA and millions of dollars. The next twist came from the surveyor. His name was Thomas Reed. He had originally surveyed the boundary years earlier. Rachel brought him into the office. She placed the altered map on the table. Thomas stared at it. Then he shook his head. I never created this. Can you prove it? He pointed at the signature block. My survey seal is missing. Could someone have copied your work? Wes! He examined the boundary line. And this line is wrong. How wrong? He looked at me. Approximately 14 acres. I felt my chest tighten. 14 acres. That was the western portion of my ranch. The part that connected directly to the county road. If the HOA could claim that section, they would control the most valuable access point. Rachel looked at Thomas. Could someone deliberately create this? Yes. Could they use it in a legal filing? They could try. That was enough. Rachel filed a civil action against the HOA. The sheriff's department continued the criminal investigation, and the county suspended all HOA development approvals involving my property. For the first time, Victoria lost control of the situation. But she wasn't finished. 3 days before the hearing, she sent me a letter. It offered a settlement. They would pay for the reconstruction of my house. They would withdraw all violations, and they would pay me a substantial amount of money. There was only one condition. I had to sign over the western 14 acres. I read the offer twice. Then I laughed. Rachel looked at me. What? They think I want money. What do you want? I looked through the office window toward the remains of my home. I want the truth. At the preliminary hearing, the courtroom was packed. HOA board members sat together. Victoria sat beside her attorney. County officials sat behind us. Fire investigators were there. The surveyor was there. And several neighbors who had spent years defending the HOA were sitting quietly in the back. The judge reviewed the evidence. Then the HOA attorney stood. He argued that the association had acted within its authority. He claimed the fire was unrelated. He called the property dispute a coincidence. Then Rachel stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She introduced the gate directive, then the deleted security footage, then the altered survey, then the acquisition proposal, then the private development assessment. Finally, she introduced the fire investigation report. The courtroom became silent. The judge looked toward Victoria. Ms. Hale, did you authorize the gate restriction? Yes. Did you know the plaintiff's residence was behind that gate? Yes. Did you know emergency vehicles were waiting outside? I did not know the fire was that serious. Rachel stood. Your Honor, the emergency call was logged 7 minutes before Ms. Hale arrived. The judge looked at her. Ms. Hale arrived after the fire began. Yes, and yet she had already issued the gate directive the previous day. Victoria's attorney objected. The judge overruled him. Victoria's face had lost all color. Then Rachel dropped the final piece. Your Honor, we obtained a backup copy of the security server. The Victoria looked up sharply. The courtroom went silent. The server hadn't been completely erased. A technician had recovered fragments of deleted video, and the footage showed someone entering the security office at 20:13 a.m. The person was wearing a dark jacket and a baseball cap, but the face became visible when the person looked directly toward the camera. It was not Victoria. It was the OA property manager, and he wasn't alone. A second person entered 30 seconds later. The courtroom screen displayed the image. Everyone recognized him. Rick Dalton, the security guard who had blocked the fire engines. I looked at Rick. He stared at the floor. The judge ordered both men to remain available for questioning. Then the prosecutor revealed something even worse. The property manager had admitted that he received instructions to keep the emergency gate locked. Who gave him those instructions? Victoria. But the story didn't end there, because the property manager also admitted that someone paid him to remove my security camera the day before the fire. The payment had come through a consulting company. That company was owned by Victoria's brother. The room erupted. Victoria stood up. No, the judge ordered everyone to sit down. The prosecutor continued. The same consulting company had transferred money to the property manager 3 days before the fire, and the amount matched the first installment of the proposed land acquisition project. Everything connected. The fire, the gate, the camera, the altered survey, the land deal, the HOA's development plan. They hadn't just wanted me to sell. They wanted me trapped, and when I refused, they had created chaos around my property. The criminal investigation continued for months. The property manager eventually cooperated with investigators. Rick admitted he had been instructed to delay the fire department. Victoria's brother admitted receiving payments tied to the development project, and forensic investigators connected the accelerant used in my house to equipment purchased by a contractor associated with the OA. Victoria was eventually charged with multiple offenses. The OA itself was placed under court supervision. The 14-acre boundary was officially confirmed as mine. The development project was cancelled, and the private gate was ordered to remain accessible to emergency services at all times. But the greatest victory came 1 year later. My house was rebuilt, not exactly as it had been. Better. We used the original stone from the old fireplace. We rebuilt the porch where my children used to sit. We planted new oak trees along the driveway. And we installed a massive emergency access gate with a system that could never again be controlled by an HOA board. On the day we moved back in, the county fire department came to visit. The same captain who had stood outside the gate that morning shook my hand. Feels good to see this place standing again. I looked at the new house. It does. He smiled. Then he handed me something. A small brass plaque. It read, "Emergency access saves lives." We mounted it beside the front door. Emily stood beside me. She squeezed my hand. "You finally got your house back." I looked across the ranch. The red barn stood beyond the pasture. The wooden fence stretched toward the county road. And for the first time in a year, there were no HOA notices on my door. No threats. No violation letters. No arguments about my property. Just silence. Peace. Home. I thought about that morning when I had stood outside the gate watching my house burn while firefighters waited for permission to save it. I thought about how close we had come to losing everything. And I realized something. The HOA believed the gate gave them power. They believed paperwork gave them power. They believed money gave them power. They were wrong. Because a locked gate can stop a fire truck. It can delay a firefighter. It can destroy a house. But it can't stop the truth from getting through. I looked at the brass plaque one last time. Then I walked inside my rebuilt home. And behind me, the gate stood wide open. Exactly the way it should have been that morning. Because when someone's home is burning, there should never be a gate between them and the people coming to save it.